Hey guys, welcome back to another Faith in 5 Minutes. My name is Brian. I'm the student pastor at Kingdom Life Church, and this is a time that we get to spend looking at God's Word and growing in our walk with Jesus together. Now, on Wednesday, we talked about the importance of being intentional in our faith and resisting the sins of complacency and apathy. We talked about how those things never lead to a meaningful relationship with our Creator. And maybe right now you're like, how do I resist those sins of complacency and apathy, and how do I be intentional about my faith when I'm stuck at home, when I don't have a church that I can physically go to, when I don't have as much access to older, more mature believers in my life? And we talked about the fact that God has actually given us everything we need to grow in our faith. See, He's given us His Word, and in a world where we have almost unrestricted access to God's Word, we have everything that we need to grow in our faith. When we talk about people being intentional about their faith and spending time in God's Word, we have to recognize that God's Word is primarily the most important thing that we have to grow our faith. In fact, on Wednesday, we talked about how this is the best time that a pandemic could have happened, where we have things like the internet, where we have things that allow us to continue to hear from church leaders and people that know theology and people that really want to help us grow in our faith. But at the same time, we have to recognize that God's Word is more important than the words of people. Paul recognized this in the New Testament. In the New Testament, he wrote to the church in Corinth, and in his first letter, he addressed an issue that was going on in that church. See, people had begun to pick their favorite church leader, and some said, Paul's our guy, and he's the one that's going to help us grow in our faith. And then some other people said, hey, Apollos is our guy, and he's actually a better teacher than Paul, and so he's going to be the one to help us grow in our faith. And Paul wrote something in 1 Corinthians chapter 3, verses 5 through 9, that really struck at the issue that was going on in the hearts of these people. He says this: "What then is Apollos? What is Paul? Servants through whom we believe, as the Lord assigned to each. I planted, Apollos watered, but God gave the growth. So neither he who plants nor he who waters is anything, but only God who gives the growth. He who plants and he who waters are one, and each will receive his wages according to his labor. For we are God's fellow workers. You are God's field, God's building." And so what Paul is saying is that God's Word, God's message of the gospel, is more important than the servant that delivers it. When we talk about having unabridged access to God's Word for the most part in our country, in the United States, we have to recognize that that is a gift. That is a gift that most people in church history didn't have access to. They had to rely on teachers, but even as they relied on teachers, Paul reminded them, the teacher isn't what's important. What God does in your life through the message of that teacher, through the message of that pastor, through the message of that servant of God, that's what's important. Because it's not the words of Paul or the words of Apollos or the words of me that's going to help you grow in your faith. It's what God does through that work that's important. See, God gives the growth. God is ultimately responsible. He's the one that sends the rain. He's the one that sends the sun. He's the one that grows crops. Because no matter how technologically savvy we are, we can't make anything grow without God being involved. And the same thing is true with your faith. I can't make faith grow in the heart of anybody that hears me preach a message or watches a video that I put out unless God is involved. God gives the growth, and He's given us everything that we need to grow our faith during this season. But that only happens when we intentionally spend time with Him, when we intentionally give of ourselves and let Him do an amazing thing in transforming our heart. And so my prayer and my challenge for you today is this. Spend time with God. Spend time in His Word. And trust that as you do that, little by little, day by day, week by week, month by month, He's going to continue to grow you in your faith. He's going to reveal things that you've never seen or heard before in His Word, and it's going to have a profound impact on your relationship with Him. Thanks for hanging out with us today, guys. Hopefully we'll see you on Monday with another Faith in 5 Minutes. Bye, guys.